When I opened that old wooden drawer and saw the leather-bound photo album inside, something in my chest went still. Not broke, not yet, just still, like the world had pressed pause. The album was brown and thick, tied with a ribbon I didn't recognize. I remember my hands trembling slightly as I untied it, thinking it might be something sentimental from my husband's childhood, his late mother, maybe. But the moment I turned the first page, I saw her face. A woman I didn't know, smiling under the warm light of our backyard porch. And beside her, my husband, Arjun. His arm around her shoulders, eyes bright with the same ease he'd once reserved only for me. And then a little boy. Maybe 5, maybe 6. The boy had Arjun's smile. That was the moment I realized my life had already split into before and after. Normal life/setup. Before that day, life was ordinary, I suppose. I used to think ordinary was boring, but now I miss it. Our home sat at the end of a quiet street on the edge of the city. White walls, a small garden, and a guest house at the back that Arjun insisted on renovating 2 years ago. He said it was for future rentals, a little passive income for our retirement. I didn't argue. We'd been married for 18 years. By then, I had learned which battles were worth fighting. I spent most of my mornings in the kitchen, the smell of cardamom tea filling the air, the sizzle of onions in the pan, while Arjun read the newspaper at the dining table, humming softly. We had one daughter, Riya, studying architecture in another city. The house felt quiet since she left. Sometimes too quiet. Arjun had always been a man of few words. He wasn't cold, just distant in his own way. He liked structure, predictability. Every evening, he came home at exactly 7:15. We'd eat together, sometimes watch the news, sometimes sit on the porch in silence. I'd grown used to that kind of companionship, the quiet kind, built not on passion but on rhythm. When he started working extra hours to manage new projects, I didn't question it. He was an engineer, and his company had recently taken on more work. It made sense. He'd come home tired, often with dust on his shirt and that faint metallic smell of concrete and sweat. I'd hand him a towel, warm his dinner, and ask about his day. He'd smile faintly, tired but reassuring. "Just work, Meera," he'd say. "Don't wait up." And I didn't. The guest house renovation took almost 4 months. Arjun handled everything himself: design, contractors, payments. I offered to help choose the curtains once, but he brushed me off gently. "Let me handle this one thing," he said. "You already run the whole house." He'd started locking the guest house after the renovation, keeping the keys in his car. I thought maybe he'd already rented it out and didn't want tenants disturbed. Occasionally, I'd see a light on late at night or hear faint music drifting from the back. He said it was the caretaker, a friend's nephew staying temporarily. I didn't question it. Because trust, when it's been built over years, becomes like habit. You stop checking if it's still intact. The first clue/suspicion. The first real sign came one rainy afternoon. I remember it because the power had gone out, and I was folding laundry near the window when I saw Arjun walking briskly toward the guest house with a plastic bag in hand. It wasn't unusual for him to check on things, but then, through the drizzle, I saw something that unsettled me. He knocked on the door, waited, and when it opened, a woman stood there. I couldn't see her clearly, just her silhouette, her hair tied up in a bun, a shawl over her shoulders. She stepped aside to let him in. For some reason, my heart raced. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe the caretaker's wife. Maybe a visitor. But when he came back an hour later, he didn't mention going there at all. Busy day? I asked casually. He nodded, pouring himself tea. Exhausting. Meetings all day. He lied so smoothly that I almost doubted my own eyes. That night, while he showered, I looked at his phone on the table, an old habit from my younger, insecure days that I had long since given up. It was locked. It had never been locked before. The second clue was smaller, a scent. One evening, when I hugged him as he walked in, I caught a faint whiff of jasmine. Not mine, I hadn't worn that scent in years. I pulled away, smiling tightly. Someone at work wears strong perfume, I teased. He chuckled. Maybe. You notice everything. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between the ticking of the clock, wondering when silence had started to feel so heavy. The days passed. Life continued, the way it always does: dishes, phone calls, bills, small talk. But inside me, something shifted. My laughter felt rehearsed. My mornings colder. I started watching the Guesthouse from the kitchen window, searching for movement. Sometimes I'd see a curtain shift or hear a door creak, nothing more. Then one afternoon, Rhea called from college. "Mom," she said, "who's the woman in the background of Dad's video call last week?" My heart froze. "What do you mean?" "I don't know, someone passed by behind him. I thought maybe you hired help." I hadn't. And Arjun had said he was in the office that day. I ended the call quickly, pretending bad reception and sat in silence, staring out at the rain-dark garden. The guesthouse light flickered on again, faint, yellow, steady. That was the night I decided to find out the truth. It happened a week later, on a Sunday morning. Arjun had gone to check on a project site. I waited an hour, then took the spare keys he didn't know I still had, the old ones from before he changed the locks. I walked across the garden, my slippers damp with dew, the air thick with silence. The guesthouse smelled faintly of sandalwood and detergent. The curtains were drawn, a pair of slippers by the door, small, pink ones. My stomach tightened. I stepped inside, heart pounding. Everything looked lived in. There was a child's drawing on the table, a half-finished cup of milk, a stack of folded clothes, men's, women's, and small ones. Then, on the dresser, that photo album. The moment I opened it, the world I knew fell apart. I don't remember sitting down, but I must have, because when I opened the album, I was on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling. The first photo was of Arjun standing beside the same woman I had glimpsed before. She looked younger than me, maybe early 30s, with kind eyes and a shy smile. Her arm rested lightly around a little boy's shoulder. The child had Arjun's dimpled chin. In the next photo, they were at a small birthday party. Streamers, balloons, a chocolate cake with a single candle. Arjun was laughing, holding the child in his arms. And the setting, I knew it instantly. Our backyard. Our home. My throat tightened as I flipped through the pages, the woman sitting on our porch swing, the boy playing with a toy car on the guest house steps, Arjun barbecuing in the corner of our garden. Each picture was dated. The most recent was just 3 weeks ago. That meant, while I was making his favorite dinner, while I folded his shirts and wished him good night, he was here, living an entirely separate life, just a few steps away from me. I don't know how long I sat there staring at those photos. My mind kept trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was charity work. Maybe the boy wasn't his. Maybe. But then I saw the caption written in familiar handwriting. Our family, forever. Arjun's handwriting. That's when I felt the first tear slip down my cheek. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just quiet, like grief settling into its final form. I didn't hear the door open, but suddenly, there was movement behind me. "Meera?" His voice. I turned slowly, the album still open in my lap. Arjun stood in the doorway, frozen. His face drained of color. "What is this?" I whispered. He didn't answer right away. His lips parted, then closed again, as if searching for a lie that wouldn't sound absurd. "I was going to tell you," he said finally, voice low. "Tell me what, Arjun?" My voice cracked. "That you built a new family in our backyard? That this," I held up the album with shaking hands, "this life, was your secret project." He took a slow step forward. It's not what you think. I laughed. It was hollow, sharp. Oh, then please enlighten me. Because it looks exactly like what it is. He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling hard. Her name is Kavita. We met through work. It wasn't supposed to happen, Meera. It just did. It just happened. I repeated, tasting the words like poison. And the boy? Is he yours? Silence. That silence said everything. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. The room tilted slightly. I placed the album down on the bed and stood. How long? He hesitated. 5 years. The number punched the air out of me. 5 years. Half a decade of lies. 5 years of pretending to come home tired, of washing away her perfume, of sleeping beside me with a straight face. You were with her when Ria left for college, weren't you? He didn't deny it. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Does she live here? He nodded once, shame flickering in his eyes. Sometimes. They stay when things get complicated. Complicated. That word almost made me laugh again. I looked around the small room, the toys, the dishes, the faint scent of soap and milk, and realized something devastating. She must have known about me too. She was living here, in the shadow of my marriage, in a house I decorated, with a man I loved. I felt myself go still, my body trembling, but my mind eerily clear. Get out, I said quietly. He blinked. Meera, get out of this house. Now. His mouth opened, but before he could speak, I picked up the photo album and slammed it shut. The sound echoed through the tiny room. I will not listen to your explanations, I said, voice shaking but firm. I have spent years defending you, trusting you, building a life that was apparently just a cover for your secret one. So please, have the decency to leave. He looked at me, not with anger, but with something like defeat. Then, slowly, he nodded. I'll give you space, he said softly. We can talk later. And, just like that, he walked away. I stood there long after he was gone, staring at the empty doorway. My hands were still shaking. When I finally left the guest house, the air outside felt heavy, like it carried the weight of every unspoken word. I closed the door behind me, locking it with trembling fingers. The reaction/action. That night, I didn't cry. Not really. The tears had already run dry. Instead, I sat in our bedroom with my laptop, the ceiling fan humming above me, and began to search property documents, bank statements, hidden transactions. I'd never been nosy, but betrayal sharpens your mind in ways you can't imagine. I found things, transfers I'd never noticed, a second account under his name, a small insurance policy listing Kavita Sharma as beneficiary. Every click felt like another stab of clarity. By morning, I had a folder full of evidence. I printed everything, packed it into an envelope, and hid it under the loose floorboard in Ria's room. I didn't know what I'd do yet, but I wanted the truth safe, somewhere he couldn't erase it. That afternoon, Arjun came home. His face was drawn, exhausted. He sat across from me at the dining table, the same place we'd shared thousands of quiet dinners. He began, I know I've hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to understand. She didn't plan this either. We were both lonely. You were always busy with Ria and... I cut him off sharply. Stop right there. Don't you dare make this about loneliness. You had a wife who trusted you, who built a life around your comfort. You weren't lonely, Arjun, you were greedy. He lowered his gaze, fingers tapping nervously on the table. I didn't want to lose you, he murmured. I laughed quietly. You already did. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked steadily, the air between us thick and unmoving. Finally, I said, you can stay in the guest house for now. But you'll move out completely in a week. I'll speak to Ria myself. He looked up, startled. You're telling her? Yes. My voice was steady. I won't let her grow up thinking lies are love. He nodded slowly, defeated. Then he stood, walked toward the door, and paused. She's not a bad person, Meera, he said softly. Kavita. I looked at him, my heart aching from the weight of his delusion. I'm sure she's not, I whispered. But neither am I. When he left, I finally allowed myself to crumble. I sat on the floor beside the window, knees to my chest, as the evening light spilled across the room, the same light that had once felt warm, now cold and distant. I cried quietly, not for him, but for the years I'd never get back. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The house was silent, no coffee brewing, no humming from the bathroom, no footsteps in the hall. It was strange how quickly a familiar silence could turn from peaceful to unbearable. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a cup of black tea, and sat by the window overlooking the garden. The guest house sat at the far end, its curtains drawn shut. For the first time, I saw it not as a part of our home, but as a wound carved into my life, small but deep. I thought about Rhea. She was due to come home that weekend. She loved her father fiercely. Telling her the truth would destroy that image, but what was the alternative? Raise her on lies like I'd been living on? I couldn't do that. By noon, I called her. Beta, can you come home tonight? There's something I need to talk to you about. She sensed it immediately. Is everything okay, Ma? I forced a calm tone. Just come. Please. That evening, Rhea arrived, suitcase in hand, face lit with the usual smile that always melted me. But the moment she saw my eyes, her expression shifted. What happened? She whispered. I didn't know how to begin. So I handed her the album. At first, she flipped through it casually, confusion furrowing her brow. Then her breath caught. She looked up at me, then down again, her fingers trembling over the photo of Arjun holding the boy. Who are they? His other family, I said quietly. Her face went blank. For a few seconds, she didn't move, didn't blink, as if her mind refused to process the words. Then a choked sound escaped her throat. No, Ma, this can't be real. I wish it weren't. She stood abruptly, pacing the room, her hands in her hair. All those nights he said he was working late, all those weekends he said he had conferences. Her voice cracked. I lied to me too. But she pulled away, eyes wild with anger and disbelief. Does he even love us? She asked. It was a question I didn't have the strength to answer. That night, she didn't eat. Neither did I. We sat in silence, the weight of the truth pressing down between us. The next morning, I heard shouting from outside. I rushed to the garden. Rhea was standing near the guest house door, yelling. Arjun stood on the porch, his face pale and stunned. How could you do this to her? She screamed. To me? Rhea, please calm down. Don't you dare tell me to calm down. Her voice shook with fury. I looked up to you. You were my hero, Papa. I defended you every time Mom was upset, every time you didn't come home. I said, he's working hard for us. And now I find out you were just cheating. Kavita appeared behind him, clutching the little boy's hand. The sight of her, timid, frightened, human, made something in me ache, but I didn't move. Rhea turned her glare on her. You knew he was married. Kavita's eyes filled with tears. I did. But he told me. Enough. Rhea snapped. You don't get to explain. I stepped forward then, gently touching my daughter's arm. Rhea, stop. Please. She turned to me, crying openly now. How do you stay so calm, Ma? How can you just stand there? I met her eyes. Because screaming won't make it hurt less. It only feeds them. The words seemed to deflate her. She stepped back, sobbing quietly into her palms. Arjun looked between us, guilt written all over his face. I never meant to hurt any of you, he said softly. I stared at him. And yet you did. Every single day for 5 years. He dropped his gaze. The boy clung to Kavita's hand, scared and silent. For a brief moment, I pitied him, a child caught in the mess adults create when they mistake desire for love. I took Ria's hand. "Come inside, Beta." As we walked away, I heard Kavita whisper, "I'm sorry." I didn't look back. By evening, news had spread. Small towns have big ears, and ours was no different. At the grocery store, people stopped mid-conversation when I walked in. The tailor, who had always greeted me cheerfully, now offered a hesitant smile. Even our neighbor Mrs. Patel, who loved gossip more than food, stood at her gate pretending to water plants just to overhear a snippet. But I didn't hide. I held my head high, paid for my groceries, and walked home. Shame belonged to him, not me. That night, I sat on the porch with Ria, both of us wrapped in shawls. The garden was quiet, except for the crickets. She broke the silence first. "Are you going to divorce him?" "Yes," I said. The word came easily now, like it had been waiting in my mouth for years. Ria nodded slowly. "I'll support you, Ma. Whatever you decide." I smiled faintly. "Thank you, Beta. But I want you to remember something. What your father did, it doesn't mean love is a lie. It just means he was weak." She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You're stronger than both of us combined." I didn't reply, but my heart swelled, not with pride, but with quiet resolve. The next week, I filed for separation. Arjun didn't contest it. He moved out completely, taking little more than a suitcase. Kavita and the boy vanished soon after. I heard they relocated to another city. I sold the guest house. Couldn't bear to look at it anymore. Instead, I turned that space into a small community library, a place where other women came, read, talked, and sometimes just sat in silence. Every book I placed on those shelves felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Ria returned to college, calling every night to check on me. And me? I learned how to breathe again. Alone, but not lonely. Months later, I ran into Arjun at the bank. He looked older, thinner. Time had stripped away the arrogance. He offered a polite nod. "How have you been?" "Peaceful," I said simply. He gave a small, sad smile. "You always were the stronger one." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. As I walked away, I realized something strange. I didn't hate him anymore. Not because I forgave him, but because he no longer held any power over me. He was just a man who made his choices. And I, finally, was making mine. That night, I lit a small lamp on the porch. The air was cool, the moon full. I sat quietly, sipping tea, feeling the kind of peace that doesn't shout. It just hums softly in your chest. The years had taken much from me: love, trust, illusion. But in return, they gave me clarity. And clarity, I learned, is a beautiful kind of freedom. It's strange, the way peace arrives. It doesn't come in grand gestures or loud triumphs. It comes quietly in the sound of the morning birds, in the clinking of a single teacup, in the way your breath steadies again after months of chaos. That's how it came to me. Slowly. A year had passed since I discovered Arjun's secret. The divorce was final. The papers, neatly tucked away in a folder I hadn't opened since. For the first few months, I went through life like someone moving through fog, half awake, half lost. But then, little by little, I began to see myself again. The woman who used to hum while cooking. The one who loved tending to her tulsi plant in the mornings. The one who once believed she deserved gentleness. I found her again. My days took on a new rhythm. Every morning, I opened the library by 9. The women who came were from all walks of life, widows, housewives, students, and some, like me, quietly carrying their own invisible wounds. One of them, Lotta, would often stay back to help me arrange the books. "People say reading helps them escape," she once said, dusting a shelf. "But for me, it helps me remember who I am." I smiled. Maybe that's why we're all here. Sometimes we didn't even read, we just sat together, sipping chai, sharing stories. There was a kind of unspoken healing in that space. No judgment, no noise. Just women reclaiming pieces of themselves one word at a time. It was my sanctuary. One afternoon, while I was arranging returned books, a familiar voice spoke behind me. "Still running this place?" I turned. It was Arjun. He stood at the doorway, holding a stack of old novels. His eyes were tired, but softer than I remembered. I didn't feel anger, only a calm distance. "What brings you here?" I asked. He placed the books on the counter. "These belong to the house. Thought you might want them for the library." I glanced at the covers, yellowed pages, corners frayed. "My old favorites." "Thank you," I said simply. He hesitated. "How's Ria?" "Doing well. She's working in Delhi now." He nodded, looking around the library. "You've done something beautiful here." "It keeps me busy," I replied. There was a silence between us, not heavy, not hostile. Just the quiet acknowledgement of two lives that had diverged too far to ever meet again. Finally, he said, "I'm sorry, Meera. Truly." I met his gaze. "I believe you. But that doesn't change what happened." He swallowed, nodding slowly. "I know." And then he left, no drama, no tears, just the sound of the door closing gently behind him. For a long time, I stood there staring at the books he'd left. Once, they had been part of our shared life. Now, they were just stories. And maybe that's all we were too, a story that had run its course. A few months later, Ria came home for a short visit. She was glowing, confident, independent, happy in a way I hadn't seen since before everything fell apart. That evening, as we sat on the porch under the string lights, she turned to me with a playful smile. "Ma, there's someone I want you to meet." My heart skipped. "Someone?" She laughed. "Yes, someone. Should I be worried?" "Not unless you plan to scare him away." We both laughed, the kind of laugh that fills the air after too long of holding back tears. Then her expression softened. "You know, Ma, for a long time I thought love was dangerous. That it would always end in betrayal. But watching you rebuild your life, it changed something in me. You taught me that love doesn't always come from others. Sometimes, it's the way you choose to treat yourself." Her words sank deep. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "You learned the most important lesson early, Beta." "I had to break to learn it." She leaned against me. Maybe we both had to. That night, after she went to bed, I walked out into the garden. The air was cool, carrying the scent of night jasmine. The old guest house was gone, replaced by a small open reading pavilion, its lights softly glowing in the dark. I sat there for a long while, thinking of the years behind me. The love that once was. The trust that had shattered. The woman I'd become in the process. And I realized, maybe life doesn't give us justice in neat packages. Maybe it just gives us chances to rise. To reclaim, to rebuild, to forgive. Not because they deserve it, but because we deserve peace. Weeks later, I was invited to speak at a local women's event. They asked me to share my story, though I wasn't sure where to begin. Standing at the podium, looking at the faces before me, I spoke from the heart. I once believed that marriage was a promise no one could break. That if you loved someone enough, they would love you back the same way. But life taught me otherwise. Sometimes, love isn't enough to keep people honest. Sometimes, it's only enough to keep you standing after they're gone. And that's still something worth believing in. When I finished, there was silence, then soft applause. But what moved me most was seeing a few women in the crowd wipe their eyes. It wasn't my pain that touched them. It was the reflection of their own. And in that moment, I understood. By surviving, we give others permission to do the same. The seasons changed again. Ria got engaged. The library expanded. And I learned to smile without pretending. Sometimes, on quiet nights, I'd look through my own photo album, the one I started after the divorce. It was filled with pictures of sunsets, teacups, book launches, and smiling women at the library. No more broken promises, no more ghosts. Just fragments of a life fully lived. One evening, while sorting donations, I found an old photo tucked inside one of the novels Arjun had given me. It was of us young, laughing, arms around each other at our first home. I stared at it for a long moment. Then, without bitterness, I whispered, "Thank you for the memories. And for letting me go." I placed the photo in a small box and locked it away. Not to hide it, but to honor it as something that was, not something that is. Now, when I stand by the window each morning, watching the light spill over the garden, I feel a kind of quiet pride. I survived betrayal. But more than that, I grew from it. And if I could tell every woman one thing, it would be this. Your worth is not tied to who stays. It's defined by how you rise after they leave. Sometimes, when I close the library at dusk, I pause by the gate and watch the sunset through the neem trees. The sky burns gold, then softens into a kind of hush, the same hush that once filled my life when everything fell apart. Only now, it no longer feels empty. It feels like peace. You see, I used to think healing meant forgetting, that I had to erase every trace of pain before I could start again. But I've learned that healing is really about carrying the story differently. The memories don't vanish. The hurt doesn't magically dissolve. You just stop letting them define who you are. Arjun's betrayal broke me once. But rebuilding myself, brick by brick, breath by breath, became the most honest love story of my life. And maybe that's what life asks of us sometimes, to lose everything familiar so we can finally meet ourselves. So if you're listening to this and you've ever found a truth that shattered your world, remember this. You will not stay broken forever. One day, you'll wake up, make your tea, and realize your heart no longer trembles when you say their name. One day, the same house that held your tears will hold your laughter again. It won't happen suddenly. But it will happen. Because strength doesn't arrive with thunder, it whispers, like the morning light slipping through the curtains, reminding you that you made it through the night. And maybe that's the lesson in my story. That the same heart someone once betrayed can still become a home for peace. That even after deception, there's still life, still love, still laughter waiting quietly on the other side. I found mine among books and sunlight. Maybe you'll find yours somewhere else, in art, in friendship, or simply in the courage to begin again. Whatever it is, don't stop looking. Because the story of your life isn't over after the betrayal. Sometimes, that's where it truly begins. Tell me, if you were in my place, would you have forgiven or walked away sooner? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if my story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Voices of Auntie May. Every story here is a reminder that even after heartbreak, hope still whispers. Red Heart.